Welcome to the Spirit Room. This podcast is a gathering place for people in search of personal growth and life's higher meaning. I'm your host, Mike Consol. I also invite you to spend time on the Spirit Room website, where you'll find headlines about religion, spirituality, psychology, and the New Age movement. Just go to thespiritroom.org.
This is Mike Consol, your host. Welcome to another episode. I'm here with my wife, Valerie. And I was raised a Catholic. This is a discussion Valerie and I have had in the past, and we revisit it from time to time. I was raised a Catholic. I'm not a Catholic anymore, and in fact, I'm not a Christian anymore. Along the way, when people... I have no religious affiliation, let me put it that way. But the fact that I left the Catholic Church and the Christian Church in general, one of the things that has come up over the years is that when people found out that I was raised in the Catholic Church, to say, oh, well, that was the problem. The Protestant wing of Christianity tends to have some issues with Catholicism and feels that they lost me because of the way that the Church operates. I've got another opinion about that, but this is actually something you've mentioned, Valerie, that the Catholic Church... it has a certain way of operating that you've called it in the past.
Good works is what it's referred to as. So you get to heaven by being good and doing everything right. So that's, I think, it in a nutshell. As opposed to learning about your walk, your spiritual walk, with your heart, and what all of that means, and what's, I don't know, what...
But the issue for me was not... I actually grew up in Catholic Church where I never felt like they were telling us to do good works to earn our way into heaven. The reason I fell out of faith with the Catholic Church and Christianity in general is that I just didn't believe in the characterization of God that they presented. I felt like it was extremely contradictory. And we've had this discussion before where I feel that there's references to God as being all-merciful, but if you don't end up believing in Christianity or accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Savior and Lord, you're destined for Hades. Now, obviously, that has never been an issue for you and millions of Christians around the world now. You and so many others don't see any contradiction there.
Well, first of all, let me clarify good works. It's not that you hear that language. You're not hearing people say good works to you, but things like, when was your last confession? And I got to go to church every Sunday just because I have to go to church. I grew up with people who went to church on Sunday just to be a number, and, couldn't wait to get out of church. And it was just kind of a different ballgame. It was just something you did. It's just something you did, and because you were told to. I've even been to Catholic funerals where the premise was he was a good Catholic. He went to church every Sunday. He did as he was supposed to. He raised his children Catholic, and yet not one word about what happens to you when you die at that funeral. So I guess when we talk about what it all means, I kind of feel like you didn't get much of an education scripturally, Bible study or anything like that, to really know what it means to be a Christian, besides doing what you're told to do.
So at a Protestant Christian funeral, rather than talk about he was a good Christian, what would the conversation or benediction be?
Well, it would be more about believing and Jesus being the way to heaven. And if without that faith, it's not about how good you are, it's about what you believe in the end. That's a hard thing for people to grasp. I know that you can be a rotten person, but as long as you still believe, you go to heaven. But that's basically what it's about. It's more about the blind faith, the faith of believing that Jesus was God's son. That is what it's all about, not Were you a good person? Did you go to church every Sunday? Things like that.
So all of that's interesting, but not really why I'm not a Christian anymore. Why, actually, do you believe in the God that's characterized by the Christian religion? I mean,
Yes, I do.
you don't see any contradiction between God being an all-merciful God and yet casting people into hell if they come to the wrong conclusion.
Well, that's the piece we don't know. And the only thing we do know for sure, I believe, is that if you believe that Jesus is God's Son, you will go to heaven, whether or not you have an opportunity upon death or whatever. But I do believe that God is a father-type figure. I think he is a jealous God. He doesn't want you believing in other gods because he's the one. And I don't have a problem with that. A lot of people, do struggle with the whole jealous God thing and how in the world could he hold somebody responsible to believe something that isn't natural to them or they weren't introduced to. Nowhere in the Bible does it say everybody is saved. It just doesn't say that.
You mentioned jealous God. That is actually a human characteristic that we ascribe to God, and yet we usually don't like people who are jealous and vengeful.
You be jealous for the right reasons, though. You don't, you're not jealous because that's, I guess, maybe it's not that we shouldn't be using the word jealous, but it does kind of describe somebody who doesn't want you to worship any other gods. That's what God is about. So, jealous and vengeful. I wouldn't say he's vengeful because you don't, I don't know. It's a tough one to even describe to somebody, but the jealousy is not because he's full of himself, but rather this is his plan for the world and he wants you to be a part of it.
I've talked to a lot of atheists over the years, and one of the things I've discovered is that I do a lot of deep questioning with them. I ask them about their atheism, not because I'm offended by it, because it's a perfectly reasonable conclusion to come to. A lot of people look around and they just see a world of suffering, or they see no evidence of God, and that's the conclusion they come to. Okay, fine, but when I dig down and try to understand better why they came to that conclusion, what I end up finding out is that they actually do believe in something. They believe in something transcendent or metaphysical, and yet they say they're atheists, they don't believe in God. And I believe that they're actually chased away from believing in the traditional theism, the traditional belief in God, because the way God is characterized by the major religions in the world is something they just don't believe in. And once they don't believe in those sorts of contradictions, and that if there is a God, he isn't possibly, or it isn't possibly going to be like that, then they end up just deciding, well, I guess I don't believe in God, when actually they do believe in something. So I would make the argument that the Christian church and other major religions, not just the Christian church, but other major religions as well, have actually deterred people from believing in God because of what I think is oftentimes a really childish characterization of the supreme being.
Well, so be it then. If that turns you off, then you weren't really going to be a part of his kingdom as he would want anyway. It's...
So I'm on the outs.
Yeah, I guess so, if that's how you feel. I still have hope that everybody is given an opportunity on their deathbed to accept Christ and to make a final decision, but I don't know that to be true. I don't know any of that. So,
are you a Christian because you were born into a Christian family in the United States, which is predominantly Christian, or was it a thoughtful choice you made between a host of options?
For me, both. I think I knew an atheist once who was very proud that he was not going to steer his children one way or the other to believe in God or not. But he brought them up not going to church and not talking about God, and this just wasn't a part of the life. And he says, my kids get to make up their own mind. And I thought, well, right there, you've raised them kind of the opposite of how I was raised. I, was raised in a Christian home, and so was introduced to it at a young age, but he's not introducing anything to his children, and therefore he's really doing the same thing. If you think you're leaving your children to make up their own mind and you don't expose them to anything, then you basically have done the same exact thing that you blame Christians for doing, and that is steering them in one direction or another. I certainly do think that when you get older, and this is what happened to me, is religion became my own thing, and I stopped going to church for 5 or 6 years during my college, and it wasn't until I had children of my own that I thought it was important again to get back. But then I had a revival, a new belief out of some Bible study that I got involved in. So for me, the answer to that question is both.
What happened in Bible study that was so revelatory?
Just things started making sense to me. Reading the Bible when I was younger was like reading a foreign language. I didn't understand any of it. And then all of a sudden, I'm involved in a Bible study that's a little deeper than anything and a little more detailed, going through each book of the Bible in verse by verse. And nobody was allowed to say that somebody else was wrong. We just started talking and sharing feelings and whatnot about it. And I had a revelation. Things just started to make sense to me. And everything I was learning was putting the world in perspective, and God's will and everything kind of all came together. And I got it. It was an eye-opener for me. And something I craved after that. I wanted more. I just couldn't get enough.
So here you are, a Christian, and you marry a pagan. I
think there's hope for you, babe.
By pagan, of course, I believe in God, but I'm not a Christian. There you are, a Christian. Obviously open-minded enough to put up with somebody like me who questions your belief in not in God. I don't question your belief in God. What I question is your adherence to a Christian doctrine, not because I'm offended at all by it, only because it's the way I operate. I like to stress test any kind of belief system or any kind of theory. And so far it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, maybe this is conversation for another time, but we've talked about where your belief system comes from, and I struggle with someone who just kind of comes up with something on their own that makes sense to them, versus something a little more structured, a little more insightful, I think. I don't know, maybe you think I'm not being insightful, but I often think, well, Well,
remember, I was spoon-fed the same thing you were, basically the Christian doctrine. Okay, raised a Catholic, yes, but where it came apart for me was when I went to college and I took one class in world religions. And when I started learning about other religions, they started making more sense to me.
Like what?
Well, the law of karma made a lot of sense to me.
That's not a religion.
No, but it's associated with Hinduism. So there was Hinduism, Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism I very much attached to. There was also Taoism, and a lot of other religions that I paid attention to at the time. But the thing is that all of them basically come down to kind of the battle between darkness and light. But there's only a few religions in the world that say basically you better be a member here or it's curtains. And that never, I just don't believe in a God like that, and I think there's a lot of people who don't believe in a God like that. And
but that's the thing that doesn't make sense to me. Why is that so unbelievable? Because you don't want a God like that? That doesn't feel good? It doesn't sound right? Why is it that that is unbelievable?
Because that would make
He's
God,
not evil. It's not evilness.
he's got to be better than a human being, and we would never.
Well, better to you means nicer, kinder. What does better mean?
It means that he isn't given to the pettiness and all the.
But the truth is the truth. Wouldn't make
Well, I'm
sense
not
that
talking
God
about
would
truth.
want you to believe the truth?
I'm not talking about what is the truth.
Well, I'm saying that why is my God so repelling to you when he really, if that's what it's all about, he wants you to believe the truth. And so why would he accept any other belief and say, well, that's okay?
Well, God's never communicated that to me. A church has communicated it to me, and that.
But you don't believe that people speak who are inspired by and given gifts that.
No, I think there's a lot of inspiration in any kind of spiritual order, religious tradition. What I don't think makes sense is a God who I wouldn't even hang out with if he was a person.
You don't know that.
Well, just based on the characteristics. Just based on your.
If you believed him, you'd certainly want. If you believed in him, you'd certainly want to hang out with him. I'd love to hang out with him.
I think that if you were face to face with God, and my great sin in life was that I came to the wrong conclusion, I was going to be cast to hell for eternal torment and damnation, I would hope that you would think that God is being unfair.
Well,
would that be a great "I told you so" moment for you?
No, certainly wouldn't, and I'd be very sad. But I wouldn't expect him to change everything for you. I just wouldn't. It just is what it is. It's something that I guess as a Christian I've accepted that not everybody is going to go to heaven. Not everybody is going to be saved. That's the way it works. And
so God loses souls.
But now he does lose souls because he gives you a choice whether you want to believe in him or not. He could force you to believe. That's not what he wants. So.
What's this magic with belief? I mean, it is or it isn't. There either is a God or there isn't a God.
Because he's asking you to believe something that you have no proof of, and it's.
Why is that so magical?
I don't.
Why is that faith that I'm going to believe in something?
I don't know. You'll have to ask God because he came up with it, not me. I don't know. It just is what it is.
Okay. Well, this presumption being that the religious scriptures, the Bible in particular, was. Well, they don't say it's written. They don't say it's the Word of God. They say it's inspired by God.
But all that was written that is so similar, written by different people in different times and different places, to come together with the same inspirational thoughts is kind of amazing to me. More than just coincidence. And
we need to bring a historian into the conversation for that part of it. It's interesting. I mean. It's a great story, but again, I think that the characterization of God leaves a lot of people very, very cold, and actually in disbelief. That Christianity promotes atheism in some ways, although it's there to promote theism. It's also promoting a lot of atheism.
Your opinion.
It's turning a lot of people off to God.
The God that they don't want it to be, that's all. Why lie about things just to get people to believe? I don't think that's right either. Don't you think that would be easier for people to lie and whatever about God, and say, oh no, he loves you and you're gonna, it's just going to, he does love you, but it's like a father's love where sometimes it's tough love. But it would be easier just to say, yeah, you can believe what you want to believe, but that's not the truth. It's hard. Truth is hard. That's I guess what I don't get is everybody thinking that the God that they want, or the Father, or the God that they want in their lives has to be just so. Well, that's not the case. So get over it.
It doesn't. It just doesn't hold water.
I know it doesn't sound good.
It doesn't.
And that's why people don't believe, because they just don't like the sounds of it.
Well, somebody who, the people who wrote the script didn't get it to hold together.
No one said it would be easy. It's tough. It's tough. That's all I can say.
Well, that's it for this episode of The Spirit Room.
Thanks.
May God bless you, whatever God you believe in.